walked in on my boyfriend hooking up with my two best friends at once. Disclaimer, this is not my story time with sending me on Instagram. I'm currently at the hospital waiting to get my egg collection, so I'm going to talk really low, sorry. But here's the down low on all three of them. I've known my boyfriend for 2 years. We started off as friends, and we've been dating for 3 months because he chased me. By chase, I mean begged me for months to go out with him. And I finally gave him a chance because I was bored. I flirted with him because I was bored. Now, bestie number one is the laziest person alive. She's always been envious and jealous of me. She's the type of person that's always trying to lose weight, but always has an excuse not to go to the gym. He has no discipline whatsoever. Me, on the other hand, I'm super disciplined. I go to the gym 5 times a week. I eat really healthy. Okay, bestie number two, she has pretty girl syndrome. She thinks she deserves everything because she's pretty. She always wants to be the prettiest girl in the room. When she isn't, she literally gets mad. Anytime one of us brings a guy around, she changes her demeanor. She makes fun of us, tries to put other girls down. She's always trying to look better than everybody else. Everything started 3 weeks ago. You're never gonna guess how I caught them. Go to part 2.
Storytime about my psycho boyfriend and backstabbing best friend. So a little background information, I was 17 and in 12th grade, and we're going to call my best friend Sheila. And she had just met this guy who was, quote, the love of her life on this vegan Facebook page. Well, the one day while they're on FaceTime, his best friend Brad saw what I looked like and he wanted my phone number. Fast forward, she gives it to him and I start talking and we hit it off instantly. I definitely thought that he was boyfriend material because even though we lived like 5 hours away from each other, we would Skype for like 9 hours a day, every day. Fast forward to my birthday, we make things official, and he wanted to see me for my birthday, so he decided to get a hotel room for us. So finally, him and I meet in person, and we end up doing the nasty, and it was terrible, but he was my boyfriend, so Well, after this, he ends up becoming weirdly obsessed with me. He starts saying things like the next time that he comes and sees me, we're gonna get married. After talking to Sheila about it, I decided to break things off with him, because things were moving way too fast, and it freaked me out. After I told him this, he started sobbing. He was like, I wish I would have got you pregnant so that way you couldn't leave me. And I'm in shock because, dude, it has been 3 months. You need to calm down. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my psycho ex and my backstabbing best friend. So like I said, Sheila convinced me to break up with him, and I did. Fast forward, Sheila becomes super distant with me, and she's posting stuff on her Facebook like, oh, when your new boo gives you his hoodie. And her man had broke up, so I texted her asking who it was about, because I'm her best friend, duh. Finally, a few days later, after she was done avoiding me, she decides to answer with, we need to talk. I slept with Brad, and now him and I are in love with each other. And I'm like, what the hell happened to girl code? Like, yeah, I didn't want him, but at the same time, you're a snake. Like, ew. Anyway, so then she starts saying things like he's the best boyfriend and the reason why I'm single is because I wasn't appreciative of him. I ended up messaging her ex and telling him what happened, and to get our get back, we slept together. Fast forward, a month goes by and then I get a text from Sheila and Brad on the same day saying that they broke up because both of them cheated on each other. And it was quite comical because Brad's like, yeah, you were the best girlfriend I ever had, and then Sheila's like, yeah, you were my best friend. I don't know why I would do that to you. I told both of them to F off, and then I told her ex what happened. So him and I laugh about it, and then 2 days later, I get a text from him saying that him and Sheila are getting married. Yeah.
Am I the asshole for not being attracted to my husband and speaking to other men? This is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. Been married to my husband for 13 years now. That's so long. Did not have the most romantic relationship when we first started dating. He's a molecular scientist, which means he's very heady. There is not one single romantic bone in this man's body. Of course, he's always been kind and sweet and considerate. When we first started dating, we would go out on fun dates. Loved hiking, rafting, mountain biking. But when it came to romantic dates, he had no clue. I was the one that would ask him if he wanted to go to dinner. Made the first move when I kissed him. In fact, he didn't even kiss me back. During the first year of our relationship, he was very unaffectionate. I was always telling him how I wanted him to kiss me or hug me. He would just shy away. I clearly underestimated just how shy he was because of the fact that he never initiated anything. At first I thought that he might have been gay, but it was proven wrong when we had done it for the first time. I mean, he went through it and he was excited and it happened. But still, there was always a lack of affection. When we greeted each other, I would be the one to kiss him. He would just put his arm around me momentarily. I wanted to accept that this is just his personality, but I just couldn't. I wanted romance and passion. I just wasn't getting even a little bit of that from him. Not even with his words. He never gave me compliments the way that I did. I would compliment him all the time. If you're wondering if I was attracted to him then, I was. In fact, I was very attracted to him. I was definitely attracted to him physically, yes. He was in great shape at the time that we met, but I was also attracted to his mind. He was very determined and disciplined. He was also incredibly intelligent and wrote really well. For all of these reasons, I fell in love with him. He also did treat me well, although he wasn't as affectionate as I wanted him to be. But it just kept getting worse and worse. I would be the one to spend the night at his place all the time. He never offered to come over to my apartment, so eventually I moved in with him. This led to us fighting almost every single night because he never wanted to do it. I would ask him what was wrong and he would say nothing, I'm just tired. Or he gave me the classic answer of my head hurts. I couldn't believe it because I was definitely out of his league. I was the one that was constantly getting hit on. No matter where I went, I was always getting hit on. He knew this but didn't care. He also happens to not be jealous at all. Which at first I did like this because it meant that we wouldn't have problems about him being controlling or not trusting me. But eventually I started thinking that it meant he didn't care if other men hit on me. Therefore he didn't care care if I talked to other guys or cheated on him. When I asked him one time if he would forgive me if I cheated, he said, yeah, of course. I also have many male friends and I would hang out with them all the time. And I know that this is probably stupid, but I wanted him to get jealous and he never did. He would say, go have fun, which at the end of the day, I know is a blessing to be with somebody who is not jealous because he gives you your freedom. But it made me feel like he just didn't care about me. That in combination with the fact that he barely ever touched me, it was really alarming. Finally threatened to break up with him after 3 years. I told him I wanted a man that was attracted to me, that loved me, that touched me, that kissed me, a man that does all the things he wants to do to his partner, in a loving way, of course. And to this, he just said, wow, that's really annoying that you have to bring that up right now. At the time, he was working on a thesis and doing a bunch of work stuff. I knew it was a very stressful time for him, but I wondered why he never wanted to be with me. I would think if you're stressed with work, you'd want to spend time with your partner and vent to them and be with them. But no, it was the opposite with him. He prioritized his job, which I understood. When he was working, he was always trying to be alone. Fast forward and we've been together 12 years. He still is kind and considerate and loving. He'll make me food, wash my clothes. I do plenty of things for him as well, but I'm the more romantic one. So I'm constantly trying to ask him if he wants to go out on a date. But the problem is I've lost all attraction to him. He doesn't prioritize his health anymore, so he's gained weight. Of course, I never want to make him feel bad, so it's not like I can tell him, hey, can you get back in shape? Recently, I started hanging out with old friends, and this led me to seeing older friends. 2 of them being men that I knew were attracted to me back in the day. One of them didn't realize I was married and asked me out on a date. I was so tempted to say yes, but I did give him my number. He's been texting me and it's been exciting. He voices how attractive he thinks I am. And yes, he knows that I'm married, but it's still just fun. I want to experience some sort of passion. I want to be held and loved. I want to be desired. Is that so bad? I told my husband that I needed more from him, i.e. passion, and he basically told me that wasn't in the cards with us. That we're at a point in our relationship where we're a married couple, and that married couples don't have passion in their relationships. Therefore, I should just get used to it. Another old friend started texting me and I've been texting him consistently. And it makes me feel good to be desired by these guys. I don't feel guilty at all. Should I stop talking to them or should I divorce my husband? What should I do? Self-care sister out. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. This is an update. I feel like you guys are going to come for me in the comments, but I needed to tell you guys. Within a couple of days, my twin sister moved in with him. After this, my parents basically disowned her. They stopped talking to her. Apparently, she called them and told them that she was going to move in with him and that they were going to try to have a life together. This is when my parents came over to my big ass house, which I took from my husband, and broke the news to me. My parents obviously felt so bad for me, but honestly, I wasn't surprised. I knew that my twin sister hated me. She would do anything, and I mean absolutely anything, to make me feel even worse. It's like pouring salt into a wound. But after about a week of living with my twin sister, my husband called me. Apparently, she was being a bitch to him. And of course, because that's her normal state of being. She's just mean. Essentially, he just asked me if he kicked her out, if I would let him move back into our house. I said, hell no. This is when he explained what really happened. We talked for about 3 hours and he spilled all the tea. And I know that this is coming from my husband, so I can't believe everything he says. But at the same time, I know my sister so well that I think he's probably telling the truth. Months ago, when we were at my parents' house, my sister and him started talking. And it was just like any other conversation. But he said one day my sister was acting strange. She paid more attention to him and she even started complimenting his looks. And like I said in part 1, my husband is pretty attractive. I mean, remember I told you guys he wanted to be a model? He's still trying, but he's not successful at it. But he got signed to a freaking modeling agency. And every time she would see him, she would just go out of her way to be really nice to him. And then the flirting started. She would say something cute to him, he would say something cute to her. He says, and I quote, "Because she's your twin, you guys look so much alike and it almost became like normal. Like I was talking to you." I mean, is that an excuse or is that psychology? I have no idea. Then he said one day they decided to go for coffee. And this is when my sister kissed him. Apparently she was the aggressor and he was trying to calm her down. But she just went for it. And because he's already kind of attracted to her because she looks like me, he kissed her. But my parents don't want to live with her, so they got her an apartment. And guess where she went to live? In the same building my husband is living in. Obsessed much? So my husband is on his best behavior. But let's see how long that lasts. But he's doing everything I've ever wanted him to do. So I did it. I took him back. I know you guys are gonna hate me for this, but I do still love him and I am still attracted to him. Now he's worried that I'm gonna go cheat on him. So he's being super controlling. I caught him following me last night to the gym and back to the house. When I told him to stop, he told me that I was his and that I couldn't be with anybody else. You see, the thing is, he knows that I have options. There's about 2 guys at the gym that always hit on me. They're actually really good looking, but I'm not that kind of girl. Or should I be? But we decided to live separately. I guess I'll give you guys another update soon. Self-care sister out.
Story time about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy. So a little background information, I was 15 and it was my freshman year of high school. And I had been dating this guy for 3 months who we're gonna call Jacob. He was a part of the popular group and was known for cheating on all his past girlfriends. But why would I see that as a red flag? Because I'm fucking dumb. Anyways, Of course he was cheating on me too, and people would tell me that. At first I wanted to leave him, but the problem was he came from a super rich family and he was really cute. So in reality, I really only wanted to stay with him so that way he would keep spoiling me with expensive gifts. He would literally buy me anything and everything I wanted. So my best friend, who we can call Taylor, she came over for a sleepover. The whole night we talked about Jacob cheating on me, and she asked me why I had not broken up with him yet. So I told her why I wouldn't leave, and then she hyped me up. She was like, period sis, do what you gotta do. Well, then I came up with this super good plan for my best friend and I both to get gifts from him and use him. So then I came out and I said, you should be his side chick. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy. So like I said before, he was cheating on me 24/7, but he was spending money on me 24/7. That's the reason why I wouldn't leave him. So then I told my best friend that she should be his side chick. So that way we could both use him for his money. So Taylor started flirting with him to try and make him want her too. And I may have given it a little push by giving her his Snapchat, so she tried to slide in his DMs and then also tried texting him on Snapchat. At first, his cheating ass did not want to do anything with her. And I was like, the one time. Anyways, he was like, I'm with your best friend right now. I don't think we should do this. But of course, like all boys who cheat, he ended up meeting up with her. And they started sneaking around. Meanwhile, I knew all the tea. Taylor was telling me everything. Taylor started getting things from him 24/7 and he looked so stupid. Well, then we decided to fuck with him one more time. Like for part 3. Story time about how my best friend and I were dating the same guy at the same time. So like I said, she was sneaking around with him. Meanwhile, she was telling me everything. He was buying her gifts, he was buying me gifts, so everything was perfect. But we had one little trick left up our sleeves. We decided that we would both make a wish list and put everything that we wanted on there. And at the end of the month, we would have a sleepover, bring everything that we got. Well, on the night of the sleepover, we brought everything, and let me tell you, this filled up my king-size bed. There was stuff all on the floor. So what did I do? I took a video of it, and I uploaded it to Instagram, tagging him and his friends, and wrote a long-ass caption, basically saying, if you cross me, this is what will happen. You'll get played. He was so embarrassed, his friends and everyone at school basically laughed at his dumb ass. Well, he ended up telling his mommy about it, and they came and talked to my parents, and they pretty much just told them to get the fuck over it, like your son did what he did willingly. She didn't do anything wrong. She meaning me. My dad was kind of mad at me, but my mom was super impressed about it, and we laugh about it all the time.
Story time about how my husband stole my dog because I told his family that he's gay. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My husband and I had been married for 6 months before I realized he was gay. The way I found out is horrendous. Husband, almost ex, he has a gardening business. This means he works with a lot of guys. The guys that he started hiring were all very young, very attractive. Obviously, I didn't care because I never thought that he would be gay. Well, I come home one day early from work, only to find him and 3 other guys on the couch, doing different things to each other. I was horrified. I was seriously triggered and traumatized. You see, I had been essayed by 2 boys when I was in college, so walking into this literally made me vomit. Even got flashbacks. What did my husband do? The man kicked me out of the house, closed the door on me. So I proceed to start ringing the doorbell. So I decide to call 911 and say that there's 2 intruders in my house, which I mean there are. By the time the police come, they're all dressed up. Of course, it was my word against theirs. The police told me that all I could do was get a divorce. At the time, I had a 2-month-old puppy. My husband didn't really like the puppy. He was a lot of work, but it was my responsibility. After I caught him, I ran straight to his mom's house and spilled the beans. His mom and dad were furious. They called him, but he wouldn't answer his phone. Called my sister and she told me that I should just go live with her. I go home to grab my things and my puppy, but my puppy is nowhere to be found. That's when my husband told me that he probably ran away. This man refused to help me look for him. I'm filing a divorce, but it's been a month since I saw my puppy, and I know the puppy's somewhere in the house. My husband doesn't let me back into the house though, and the cops were absolutely no use. I'm planning on breaking in. I mean, what should I do? Give me advice.
Story time about how somebody stole my $12,000 dog at a house party. So a little background information, I was 17 and a junior in high school, and I decided to throw a party at my house before winter break. So usually whenever I threw parties, I would always have everybody in the basement because I had a pretty big basement. There was a sliding glass door to the outside, so nobody had to go upstairs to get in or get out. And I would always lock the door to the upstairs just in case anybody decided to wander up the stairs. And because I didn't think anybody would get in upstairs, I let my dogs run around the house. So everybody who I invited showed up, and I guess that my address got leaked because a bunch of random people started showing up at my house. And it's not like I didn't have neighbors. No, I lived in a very tight cul-de-sac. So people were parking in front of my neighbors' driveways, in my neighbors' driveways. So I called my parents, and eventually I had to have my neighbors call the cops on my house party. My own party. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how somebody stole my $12,000 dog at my house party. So like I said, I had to call my parents and they got the cops called on the house so that way I could get everybody that I did not know out of the freaking house. Thankfully, my friends and I hadn't started drinking yet because literally 5 minutes after my friends showed up, random people started showing up in big groups. So after everybody clears out, I go to walk upstairs and I have my keys in my hand ready to unlock the door. The door was literally busted open. Like somebody had to have kicked the doorknob because the frame was cracked, the door was cracked, it was bad. So I'm freaking out. I wasn't even thinking about my dog at the time until my friend Kirsten asked to see my new puppy. Because Kirsten had just got home from college and she had only ever seen the dog over FaceTime. So we're searching all over the house and we cannot find my fucking dog. Well, when my parents got home that night, they pretty much grounded me for life. But then I want to say a month later, my friend Jake, who was there that night, called me freaking the fuck out. Like for part 3. Part 3 about how my $12,000 dog got stolen at my house party. So like I said, we couldn't find Mimi. My parents pretty much grounded me for life. I get a call from my friend Jake, who was there that night of the night of the party. And he's like flipping out. He's like, I think I know who took Mimi, aka my dog. So I'm like freaking out. I go into the kitchen, I put him on speakerphone so that way my parents can hear. And he was like, well, my girlfriend Avery has this one girl who was at the party that night on Snapchat. And I was like, okay, and what the fuck about it? And he was like, well, the one night we were laying in bed together and she was going through people's Snapchat stories and then she got onto this girl's private story. And I told her, that's my friend's dog, the one that got stolen. So then we looked her up on Instagram, we went on her Visco, and she has a crap ton of pictures of your dog on her Visco. So somehow his girlfriend Avery finds this girl's address. My parents were like, oh, we want to call the police. Somehow I talked them out of doing that. Long story short, I went to her house, I got my dog back after telling her parents about it, but when I was leaving, I ran over her.
Here's a story time, but I needed to sneeze first, so give me a sec. Story time about how I got my boyfriend fired from his job because he had a girl coworker. I'm totally toxic. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Instead, I'm on Instagram. Let me start off by saying, yes, I do love my boyfriend. I'm also extremely toxic. And honestly, he is too. Here's a little backstory. We both met when we were dating other people. In fact, he was dating my best friend, and I was dating his best friend. I'm 18 and he's 19. So yeah, we are a little immature. But hey, love is love. After we met, we started secretly hooking up. And then finally, we broke up with them. Now that we're together, none of our friends speak to each other. They've all sided with the other friend. So he and I have been together for 6 months now. He's extremely controlling. He's always checking my Snapchat, my location, always wants to know where I am. So I started doing the exact same thing to him, mostly out of spite. Then I realized he's a little sketchy. He does not want me to have his location. So I started blocking him on Snapchat and Instagram. This drove him absolutely crazy. So much so that he deactivated his Instagram just so that I would feel more comfortable. At first I was like, OMG, he's so sweet, he loves me. But then I just realized this is another manipulation tactic on his part. I needed a way to manipulate him even more. He started coming to my house unannounced. My parents hated this. They told him that he shouldn't be doing that anymore. He started talking bad about my parents to me. Obviously, this is a big red flag for me. I mean, I can deal with the rest, but talking bad about my parents? Hell no. Well, I was furious with him. He started telling me that my mom was crazy and that she was probably cheating on my dad, and that that's where I learned to be a cheater too. Then he started talking bad about my parents to his parents. So his mom called me and asked me if I was okay with my parents. Guess what happens? I show up to his job, and there he is talking to a girl. A pretty girl. Both work at Abercrombie & Fitch. Can you imagine what she looks like? So I had to get him fired. Part 2. Story time about how I got my boyfriend fired from his job because he had a girl coworker. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Instead, I'm on Instagram. Well, I show up to his Abercrombie & Fitch job and I find him talking to a girl. Very pretty girl. I went insane. Pulled him aside and told him that he needed to quit right then and there. That if the tables were turned and I was the one talking to a really cute boy at my job, he would lose it and break up with me immediately. He started telling me that I was overreacting. I was being insecure. Me being insecure? Not him checking my phone every day. By the way, the girl was so nice to me. He came up to me later and said, you don't need to worry about anything. I have a boyfriend and I'm not interested in yours. I did appreciate it, but the way my boyfriend was talking to her was a no-no. So here's what I did. Waited for his shift to end, and I went straight into that Abercrombie and asked to speak to the manager. And that's when I made up the whole story. I told him that this boy that was working there was harassing me, and that he kept staring at me and grabbed my arm, which made me feel super uncomfortable and scared. And the cherry on top, I started to cry. And I told him that this wasn't the first time it happened, that the same boy had done it another time. The manager, of course, apologized right away. I left the store. 2 hours later, my boyfriend calls me crying. He said that he got fired and he didn't know why. That all the manager said was that his behavior was inappropriate, and my boyfriend couldn't figure it out. Well, he's never gonna find out that it was me that got him fired. So I begged my dad to hire my boyfriend at his car shop. And my dad did, out of the kindness of his heart. So I made my boyfriend eat all of his dirty words. Not only that, but him working at my dad's car shop allows me to keep an eye on him at all times. You see, I have access to all the cameras. And I also show up whenever I want. But here's the crazier part. Remember the girl that my boyfriend was talking to? She slid into my DMs and told me that I'm pretty. She even asked me to go on a date. I mean, should I?
Storytime about my toxic best friend group. So a little background information. I was 16, and it was the end of 9th grade going into summer break. And one day randomly these 3 girls added me on Snapchat and put me into a group chat. Now, I had seen them around school, but I never said hi to them. I was finding it very hard to make friends in 9th grade because everybody was so toxic. Anyways, like I said, they added me to a group chat, and all of them said hi to me. And usually I wouldn't respond to random people on Snapchat, but because I had seen them around school, I decided why not. And it was so random, they just started sending pictures of themselves into this group chat. And it low-key made me feel bad because I kind of hated my physical appearance. But anyways, they asked me if I wanted to be friends with them. Oh, and by the way, their names were Stacy, Savannah, and Emily. So of course I said yeah because it was hard for me to make friends. So fast forward, my birthday was coming up. So they asked me if we could hang out. They said they wanted to give me an early birthday present. So I said yes, of course. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my toxic friend group. So like I said, they asked me if we could hang out to give me an early birthday present. So I said yeah. And Emily had a pool at her house, so they asked me if I wanted to go over there. And of course I said yeah, it was summertime and it was hot outside. Well, when I got there, they asked me to order the pizza and they said that I had to pay for it. So I said yeah, because they were my besties at the time. So I used some of my birthday money to pay for the pizza for all of us. And when I got back to Emily's house, they were all already in the pool. So I was kind of mad. 1, because they didn't go with me, and 2, they were just hanging out without me. So we're sitting there eating the pizza. And then after, all 3 of them get in the pool and they start taking pictures with each other, not even asking me to be in any pictures. So at that point, I was so annoyed. I was just like, you guys are being so rude. And Emily's like, what are you talking about? We didn't even do anything. And then, of course, Stacy and Savannah agreed. So I was like, 1, you didn't even ask me to be in any pictures and you made me pay for the pizza for all of us. And she was like, you're ugly. We didn't want you in the pictures. So I threw the pizza away and went,
My father-in-law is forcing my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup today. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. Now, we did get married very, very young. By very young, I mean I was 18 and he was 19. When we started dating in high school, his dad was totally against the relationship. See, my husband was super popular. He played on the football team. All the girls chased him. He also played basketball and was perfect at everything he did. As you can imagine, was extremely strict with him. He was not even allowed to go out on weekends. Me, on the other hand, my parents are pretty much hippies. They let me do whatever I want. We're all very spiritual. My parents have full trust in me. Because of this, I make smart decisions. I actively seek my parents' advice. I even told my parents I lost my virginity when I did. And we had a big conversation about it. It was not dramatic. It was not like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. They just support me in everything I do. Now, my husband's parents are not the same. They tell him not to do a lot of things. They try to control him. So as we were dating in high school, his dad kept telling him to break up with me. He claimed that I was holding him back and that because of me, he spent less time training. Which technically, yes, is true. But at the same time, you cannot stop your son from experiencing human relationships. In fact, he actually broke up with me for 2 weeks. But then we got back together in secret. Everything culminated when he asked me to marry him right after graduation. His parents were absolutely against it. But my parents were all for it. You guessed it, go to part 2. My father-in-law wants my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. When he asked me to marry him right out of high school, his parents absolutely freaked. They went to my parents' house and told me off for saying yes. In other words, they were completely blaming me for the whole thing. As if their own son didn't go buy a ring and ask me to marry him. He even did a beautiful proposal, which he had been planning for months. But at this point, his parents didn't even know that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. When they came to my house, his mom, my now mother-in-law, started crying and yelling at me. She told me that I was ruining their family, that I was trying to steal her son, and that all I really cared about was their money. By the way, my parents were middle class, but we were not destitute. His parents are very rich. They own several businesses. But of course, I'm not after their money. That's when they said that if we did end up getting married, I would have to sign a prenup. And I said, yeah, I want to marry him because I'm in love. At this point, his parents knew they couldn't stop us. We were going to get married with or without their approval. But thankfully, his parents came around and let us get married. We had a quaint, small wedding. It was so magical. But his parents wanted him to go to college to play football. In other words, they wanted him to be the next Tom Brady. They made him train for hours, and they didn't even let us live together for the first year we were married. And because they were supporting him, he couldn't say no. They had us on a schedule. Could only see him for about 2 to 3 hours a day. And we were married. 2 years later, he's playing for a football team. But his parents keep thinking that I'm dragging him down. So now they're trying to convince him to leave me. Go to part 3. My father-in-law is trying to convince my husband to divorce me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and this is the final part of the 3-part story time. I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. After a year of us being married, his parents did not allow us to live together because he needed to focus on football. So obviously, I was living with my parents. I was focusing on my own studies, but his parents did allow us to see each other 2 to 3 hours a day. Now, you might think my husband is a total pushover, but let me explain something. His parents paid for all of his training and his entire college tuition. They gave him the best of everything. He got sports massages every single day. They even installed a cold plunge in their backyard. They also had a full gym setup where he and his teammates would go work out every single day in their house. Obviously, he did not have time for little old me. After a year of this, I couldn't take anymore. I wanted to be with my husband. So I gave him an ultimatum. That he tell his parents that he and I wanted to live together. That's all I wanted. I was even willing to pay for half of the rent. And he told his parents, they said fine. And they bought us a house. Obviously under my husband's name, not mine. Fast forward another year up until now. I've heard his dad tell him on several occasions that he needs to divorce me. That he could find a much prettier wife once he becomes bigger in the NFL. And I walked in on his mom telling him that maybe I can't even have kids. And that he should have me checked. My parents-in-law hate me. I sometimes feel like I am holding him back. They make us miserable. My parents think I should just walk away from the marriage, but I'm too in love. Should I confront my parents-in-law? Help me think of what I should say to them.
Storytime about my strict grandma. So a little background information. In January 2023, I was really looking forward to having a sleepover at my friend's house. But my grandma quickly shut that shit down because she said that my friend was, quote, emo, according to the way my friend dressed. Like, girly, it's 2024. Anyways, I tried to argue with her and say that that doesn't mean that she's a bad influence. But my grandma, stuck in her ways, just wasn't having it. Instead, she said that I was going to be staying the weekend at my aunt's house with my brother and my cousin. So while I was at my aunt's house, I decided to sneak over to my friend Oliver's house. Get your head out of the gutter. It was nothing like that. We both agreed to be strictly friends. Anyway, so I hung out at his house with him and his brother Connor, and we were giving each other's Instagrams a makeover. Now keep this in mind for later. We ended up changing my username to the Beaner 2.0. Oh, and when I said I snuck over Oliver's house, I mean for my grandma. Like, my aunt knew about everything, but my grandma wasn't watching me, so I didn't care to tell her. Fast forward, the weekend's over, my grandma comes to pick us up, and later on that night, she brings up my Instagram username to me. Like for Part 2 about my super strict grandma. So like I said, my grandma brings up my username, the Beaner 2.0, to me later on that night. She started telling me that she was super concerned about the lack of self-respect I had for myself and how I need to start caring more about what other people thought about me. But honestly, I didn't care. I tried explaining that I didn't mind the term Beaner since I'm half Mexican and I've already faced racism before, so to me, it's just a word. After I explained that, I thought that her and I were good because she stopped arguing with me. And then she starts bringing up my Instagram posts. She's like, who are these boys that you were with? Whose house is this? Blah, blah, blah. Because I guess my aunt had told her that I went over a friend's house, but she didn't specify that it was a boy. So my grandma was fine with it. Anyway, so she had a field day with that shit, and the next day she decided to take my phone away because of the consequences of my actions, claiming that this situation was so serious that she had to get the police involved. This whole situation resulted in me being grounded forever, and we had to start attending family therapy sessions after this. Yeah. Storytime about how my whole class found my teacher's OF. So a little background information. I was 16 and in 10th grade, and my best friend Maya and I were walking in the hallway getting ready for first period. Now, even this early in the morning, the rumor was already going around that Miss J had an OF. Fast forward, Maya and I get to first period. 10 minutes after class started, Miss J put a problem up on the board. After she gave us a little bit of time, she was like, okay, who can solve this? And as she's about to call on someone, there was this guy, Jake, in my class, who was passing notes to this one girl, Jessica. And if you're wondering why they were passing notes, it's because we were not allowed to have phones in this class, of course. Anyway, so then Miss J is like, can you read that to the class, blah, 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 blah. And the note literally said, did you hear about Miss J's OF? She finished teaching the rest of our class, but we didn't see her for like 3 days after that. And I guess she wasn't fired because she had an OF. It was because there were students subscribed to it. And she knew about those students that were subscribed to it and she didn't do anything about it.